Welcome to the podcast review show. Tonight, we're taking a look at Fish Nerds, and already I just love the name. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. If you're new to the show, this is where we listen to a podcast. We've been hired tonight by Clay to take a look at his show. We find out what he's doing right and tell him keep doing that. And then we look for those things that maybe just need a little bit of tweaking. And we look over your content. We look over your website. We look over your flow and go from top to bottom. And joining me is the one and only, don't be fooled by cheap imitations, 30 years in the radio biz. Not only, you know what's impressive about that? Not only 30 years, but like you've been at the top for a long time. And
I have been.
That is Erik K. Johnson, better known as the podcast talent coach. So Erik, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Surviving 30 years in the radio business isn't easy. There are many, many casualties. A lot of people get out of this business before you know it. But thanks for having me, Dave. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's jump in with Clay.
Hello.
How are you, buddy?
I got a summer cold, but I'm doing okay, and I'm borrowing my daughter's headphones because I can't find mine. So that's how my night's going.
Those are sexy pink headphones you got there, Clay. I love them.
Pink is always best, man. It's always a good color. And if you're fishing and you're choosing lures, don't have any idea what to do, go with pink. You'll win every time.
Really? Do pink lures really win?
They totally do. Yeah, it's my favorite color lure choice always. Yep.
Huh.
Well, and I hate chartreuse because I don't know what that means.
You don't know what that means either.
Nope, no idea.
Well, what inspired you to start Fish Nerds?
All right, so gosh, a few years ago in 2011, my partner Dave and I went on a quest to catch and eat every kind of freshwater fish in New Hampshire. And the idea was we have never done anything useful in our life. We thought killing a bunch of fish might put us on the map for something big. And we had done all this work. We got an NPR. We got all this attention. We were blogging and writing for a bunch of magazines and newspapers. And we almost had a book deal. And the book deal kept failing because we weren't reaching people. We had an agent, like a big time agent and stuff, and everyone kept shooting us down. And so we said, well, let's launch a podcast. And of course, we didn't know about the School of Podcasting, so we didn't go through you, Dave. Sorry. And we just started. We grabbed some cheap microphones and stuff from my students' classroom. I was a science teacher at the time, and we pushed record and made our first show and put it out in the world, and got our first 1-star review. And it's been history since then.
What was the book about?
The book was about, it was a action adventure book about a quest to catch and eat every kind of freshwater fish in New Hampshire. We never actually put the book out. We've got about 80% of it written. Our agent disappeared. The magazines we were writing for went out of business, and we just kept podcasting.
You had the anti-Midas touch. Everything you touched went away.
I know, and it's funny because my friend just launched a new magazine. I started writing for that magazine, and I'm like, oh my God, it's going to fail. There's no chance it's going to win.
This is the very last episode of the podcast review show right here.
Yeah. Sorry, Dave. You're out of business. School podcast is closing down.
Well, yeah,
we're done.
Any magazine these days is kind of thin ice, so to speak.
Yeah. So we podcast because writing is hard. And we thought podcasting would be easy, although then we didn't think about editing and production and promotion, and it's hard, but it's a different kind of hard, and it's way more fun than writing. Way more fun, and there's less typos when you talk. So that's why we podcast.
Without throwing somebody under the bus, you said we sent out a little survey to anybody that gets reviewed. You said some fishing shows are super boring. Can you give me an example of why they're boring?
Yeah. So to be honest, I don't listen to other fishing shows because they're all about like, yeah, you need a number 6 tippet that tapered at the end, and you need a Clouser minnow, and you tie it on there, and then you catch the trout and blah, blah. It's just, they're just boring and or they sound like ESPN sports shows. So welcome to the Bass Podcast, and we're gonna kill some bass today. and I don't watch sports. I don't understand sports, and I don't do a how-to fish show. Although occasionally it happens in our show because of demand. More of our show is more like a magazine show, so it's a variety show, and every week is different. I've got about a dozen correspondents now making segments for us. So, yeah, I find fishing podcasts to be really boring. And I'm hoping that we break that mold a little bit because, Dave, as you always say, there's no rules in podcasting. So every week we break whatever rule we can and just put out a show as best we can. because no one's going to punch you in the face, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
anyway, but I mean, I know other good fishing podcasts exist. I just haven't found them. Even there's one out there even called the World's Greatest Fishing Podcast, and it was designed specifically for SEO. I think it was written only just to get SEO marketing. They lasted less than a year. The Fish Nerds were on them because we had to be on it, but it didn't last very long. But it still gets better Google results than the Fish Nerds do because they wrote it only for SEO marketing. I don't think they ever intended putting out a good show. I think they just wanted to put out a show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's we're going to jump in. We're going to play the intro of your show, first couple minutes, and talk about our first impression as we check out the intro here.
Oh, I hope it's not boring.
Welcome to the Fish Nerds. It's the latest about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd of the Fish Nerds Podcast, and we're so happy that you are listening. The show's been growing like crazy lately. We've been getting lots of cool attention, and we've done a lot of crazy stuff. We thank all of everyone for being part of it. We're trying to get back to our regular format now, but new ideas keep coming, which is fantastic. So today on the show, we've got Hugo Medeiros back. Hugo's going to bring us his Killing Fish in Time with Hugo. I think we're eating smooth dogfish tonight. We also are going to explore in depth the question of, are cormorants a conservation win or a fishing pest? Or is there something in the middle there? The other thing we're doing is we're trying something brand new. There's been some demand for fishing reports, so we are asking listeners to call 607-378-FISH and leave us a voicemail and tell us in less than a minute's time, what is the fishing like in your area? So it would sound something like this. Hi, my name is Clay Groves from Fish Nerds Guide Service. And here in New Hampshire, the Mount Washington Valley, the fishing has been excellent in the lakes and ponds. Bass are on the beds. Trout are biting in the lakes, but the rain has made the fishing in rivers very difficult. So catching trout in rivers is hard right now. Thanks for checking in. And for more information, you can go to fishnerds.com to check out our guide service. So that's an example. You could be as creative as you want to be. And at the end of each show, we will mix those in. So you listen through the show. At the end of the credits, you will hear fishing reports. And my hope is we'll get a ton of these from all over the world. And you'll hear a fishing report from your area, or maybe you'll think about, geez, maybe I want to go to Saco, Maine and fish with Captain Sean or do something like that. So check it out at the end of each show going forward, as long as we're getting calls in. And, you know, that's the hope, right? So it's at 607-378-FISH, and you can be part of the show. And by the way, you can use that number at any time to leave us any voicemail and be part of the show. We're always happy to hear from listeners.
And that's how we'll just we'll wrap it up there. So, Eric, what were your thoughts on the coming out of the gate?
I love it. We come out of the gate swinging. We did a nice job setting up the show, what to expect on the show, what's coming up. I like the way that you preview everything that's on the show, kind of like if it's a magazine format to the show, kind of like the index and what we can expect throughout the entire show, which I thought was great. A couple nitpicky things I had there. One, Clay, you say we're trying to get back to our regular format, but new ideas keep coming. I'm not sure what the regular format is because I'm a new listener here. Just keep in mind that you're always got new listeners coming through the door. So if you're going to make a statement like that, kind of explain to me what the usual format is, or what I missed that wasn't the usual format. You know, if we've been doing a lot of long form interviews before and we're going to get back to the magazine style show that we usually have, or we haven't had a correspondent on for a couple weeks, now we're going to get back to it, whatever that happens to mean. Make sure you just keep in mind that you want to make it as friendly as you can for the new listeners, and just as comfortable for your regulars that are coming along too. One thing that kind of confused me is you use the term "we" a lot, like you're talking about we do this and we're asking listeners to do that, and I'm not really sure who we is, because Hugo's the only one that you introduced.
Right.
And I don't know if you have a co-host typically, and this time you don't, or if you have multiple correspondents, and this week Hugo's the only one that's on. So that kind of confused me a little bit there. If there are other members of the team, bring me into that party too, and kind of get me up to speed quickly there. And then just the last point about the intro. You talk about we're asking listeners to call such and such to give us their reports. If you really want to make that call to action powerful, talk to that one individual. So, people have been asking for fishing reports. So what we're asking you to do is call this number and give us a fishing report from your area. So you're talking directly to that one person. So they're not shirking their duties to somebody else, figuring out somebody else will call. I don't need to. So talk right to that individual that you want to pick up the phone and give you that report. But overall, I love the energy. I love how we just jump right into it. You set it up quickly. You didn't waste a whole lot of time on any one point setting it up. You're going to let us get to that when the segment comes. And I thought the intro was great. One thing I love about the show itself that you don't mention in the intro, but that the tagline is on your artwork, and that's that it's the fishing show, and it says always entertaining, usually funny, and mostly true, which is kind of the epitome of fishing in itself, because it's mostly true and it's always entertaining. The stories are always great.
The mostly true gives us an out when we make mistakes. We can go, well, mostly true.
Yeah, right. The fish was this big. Yeah, sure it was. Sure it was. So that's what I had. Dave, what do you got?
Well, the teacher in me loved the fact that you said, this is what we're looking for, and then you did one. Because sometimes when you say, call in a fishing report, okay, like how long? So you gave exact, like try to make it under a minute. It might sound like this. So you really gave people a good example of like, this is what we're looking for. Then you gave the number. I love the fact that your phone number ends in fish. I thought that was
keep it simple.
I love the fact that I think your whole brand we'll talk about your website a little later, but everything involved with this show kind of comes across as, look, we're here to have fun. We're here to talk about fish, and we're here to have fun. You know what I mean? It's like
it's a fun sandwich.
Yeah, the name is Fish Nerds. The website super easy, and just as soon as it comes in, I always like Erik's analogy of you don't get on a bus that says somewhere, right? You're like, well, let's take the bus to I don't know. It's like, no, I know exactly within 5 seconds what this show is about and what's expected. So I was like, all right, cool. I liked the music. It was nice up tempo and it had a nice build up, and I really liked it. And then from there, you went into talking about things like Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
I did mention I found a couple of links on your website.
I saw that.
Patreon. So it's hard to get people to donate when the link doesn't work. So that was, I don't know if it's on the whole website, but at least on episode 159, which is what we're listening to, that had a little bit of a little mental hiccup there. And then Erik, you had a point about the way he kind of talked about sponsors.
Yeah, I kind of got confused because when you were talking about your Patreon ask, you said if a bunch of people do that, we don't need to seek outside sponsors. But then, and then about 10 minutes later, hey, now a word from our sponsor, which I thought was, wait a minute, I thought we were just talking about not having sponsors. And then that kind of popped in, which kind of got confusing. But and I don't have a problem if you say, you know what, we have sponsors, but the more we can get, the fewer we need. I understand that ask there. The thing I want to caution you about is framing sponsors as being bad, because you never know when you're going to need them. And if you position them as the evil sponsor, so donate so we can keep the evil sponsor away, when it comes time that you need a sponsor, they're going to go, well, yeah, but you're positioning us as being the bad guy. Why would we want to be a sponsor of your show?
That's a good point.
Sponsors aren't necessarily bad, but you want to keep them to the minimum. In radio, we talk about commercials. Listeners don't want to listen to 8 minutes of commercials while they're trying to hear their favorite music. But we need commercials to keep the lights on. It's just a matter of. So we try to never talk about commercial free. We try not to talk about we're turning the commercials off so we can turn the music on. We talk about nonstop music. We talk about more music. We don't talk about fewer commercials because we don't want the listeners to focus on the commercials, and two, we never want our sponsors to feel like they're the bad guy. So I would just kind of caution you about that, as just in the way that you frame it. I understand what your message is. I don't have a problem with the message. Just be careful, because you don't want your sponsors to come back on you and say, well, I'm paying you money and you're positioning me as the bad guy.
That's a very good point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Well,
So thanks.
I've actually got a small clip of that.
And it really appreciates it. $4 a month does not hurt you. But in the scope of things for the Fish Nerds, it's big. If a bunch of people do that, then we don't need to seek outside sponsors. And I would love to never have sponsors. We're going to have sponsors because we're not getting enough money. But if enough of you did that, we would just say, see you later, sponsors. And just take
yeah.
and it's your show. If you own a business and you want us to mention your business on the show, donate us $25 an episode, and we will mention your business, like our friend Josh Lopes at lopestax.com. If you're in Massachusetts and need a great accountant, he's your guy. He's also my neighbor in New Hampshire sometimes.
Okay.
So Josh is a sponsor there, and you just told me that your sponsors are bad guys. But hey, if you want to be a sponsor, send me some money.
Yeah, it's confusing. I'm so confused.
The other thing that went out there, poor Josh got a 7-second spot.
Yeah.
Then later you talked about some sort of vinyl place.
Yeah.
You got like like, did they pay their $25? I'm like,
I wish.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, if I'm Josh, I'm like, hey, can I get a little more? Can I get at least a 15-second spot? Because you're just like, hey, he's my neighbor and he's a good guy. That was the pitch. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that there was a little more than that in of the ad.
Yeah.
Are we ready for a pet peeve?
Let's have it.
It's a pet peeve of mine. And I'm going to play something, and I want you to tell me if there's anything wrong with it.
I'll know for sure.
All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's final.
Let me set this up. This is you coming out of the sponsor for the vinyl place. So let me see if I can reset this now. Yeah, okay, here we go.
Again, it's final me please. It's joinvmp.com/fishnerds.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Here's the question we're asking today in Fish in the News. Are cormorants a pest?
All right, anything wrong with that clip?
There was no breath.
I got nothing.
Because what I cut out is because, correct me if I'm wrong, but the news vision is kind of the transition into the news. You transition into the transition. Because what I cut out there was you saying, hey, and now it's time for Fish in the News. News. And I'm like, why are we announcing the transition? And you're right. I could have put a little breath there.
I didn't hear the cut. So
yeah. So like I said, I'm nitpicking now, but I always get confused when people do that. They'll be like a host and a co-host and be like, hey, Eric, you want to go to the lightning round? And Eric will say,
now it's time for the lightning round.
Yeah, and I'm like, cool. And then I'll play the jingle, lightning round. It's the light. And I'm like, just do it. It's not like, hey, Eric, can I ask you a question now? No.
Yeah, you don't need to ask a question to ask a question. It's
a pet peeve of mine. It's not a deal breaker, but I just noticed, I'm like, he just did the intro. And for the record, they do this every night on the Jimmy Fallon show. So
yeah. And that news jingle is brand new for us. We just got that.
Well, that's the thing. I love the news.
So I'm new at it. But I'll do that.
Sounds great.
I thought you did a great job coming out of the sponsor, because you did the whole end of sponsor talk where you go a little lower and just slow down. And then I was like, all right, we'll just, and then on the other side of the jingle, go, hey, it's time for the news or the fish news. And we're talking about news. It's about fishing, blah, blah, blah. And then do your thing. So, and then what is the name of the bird we're talking about?
The cormorant.
Okay. Because I was like, the first time I heard it, I thought you said Marantz. And I'm like, speaker thing that they're talking about. So,
I drink a lot, Dave. You know, it's hard.
The next part of the show is where you read. Is this where you did the reading part?
I did some reading. Yeah, I don't usually do a lot of reading. I'm bad at it. But I did some this show, which is why I put this one up. I wanted to hear what you thought of it.
Well, there's a bad habit that you can get into, because if you're like me, I know I don't like to be read to. So if I ever read something in a podcast, I have a tendency to put on my yada, yada, yada voice. So I'm kind of like, all right, so I'm going to read you the back of this book. It's 25 Notes for Successful Musicians, Chad Jeffries, and LA or New York, everything between. And you start like zipping through things because you don't want to bore people.
Mm-hmm.
Process, you're either A, going so fast that they can't keep up, and you're skipping over things that sometimes cause an issue. Eric, what else happens when you start reading stuff?
Well, people write different than they talk. So when you're reading something, you're reading the way somebody would write it, which makes it difficult to listen to and understand. People will talk differently than they actually write. So when you read it, people are going to have a difficult time connecting with what you're saying. What I would recommend you do is you read the article and highlight a couple passages that you want to point out. You can read maybe the introduction to the article and then basically say, this article is saying 1, 2, and 3, and kind of set up, because the article, the whole point of the article is to set up the interview with this guy who knows a whole bunch more than the three of us combined on this bird and the stocking of this lake. And he's going to tell it to us. So there's really no point in going through the whole article. Just hit a couple highlights, make your point, give us what we need as a foundation for the discussion, and then put the article aside and let's jump into the discussion about it. Because as you're starting to read it, my eyes started glazing over. I'm like, I don't even have a clue what we're talking about here.
Oh, sorry.
so no need to be sorry. I'm just trying to kind of mold what you're doing. I like what you're doing. I love the fact that you used the article as the impetus of contacting this guy and you got into it with him on Facebook or whatever it was. I thought that was great. I thought the whole fact that you and he started going toe-to-toe on social media about this whole topic, and then you realize, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I should probably get this guy on the phone and talk to him. And it turns out to at the end of it, it's almost a friendship. Like, hey, I'll come on up, let's fish together.
Exactly, yeah.
I loved where it went. I just want to see you build a little stronger foundation and get people to buy in, especially those that aren't maybe it's Joe Weekend fisherman who doesn't know everything there is to know about fish. Maybe describe the bird to me a little bit more and why it's a bad bird and why, or some things like that. So if I'm average Joe who just goes and throws his line into the water once a month because that's when my wife lets me, then explain to me what I need to know to be up to speed with the conversation and the debate, and then let's dive into it head first. But the article, I think, just got a little long. Once we got into the discussion, I was right there with you again.
So practice reading and summarizing. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, just highlight and summarize. Yeah. Highlight and summarize.
You can always go back to the, who, what, when, where, how, those things, and just because you were doing a great job of just talking to the listener. You're like, hey guys, welcome. I didn't feel like it was scripted. You're just having fun talking to your buddies into the microphone. Everything was flowing, and all of a sudden you're like, and I'm going to read you this article, and I was like, oh, here we go. And there are times when there are things you have to read because there's a lot of information. But I was with Eric about halfway through. I'm like, wait, is he the bird? And then it was like, wait, is he for the bird or not? No, he's not. No, he's protecting the. Okay, he's protecting the bird. He thinks you shouldn't kill it. It took me a while to figure out which side you were on because
I'm not honest. I still can't figure out which side I'm on this one. By the way, I have no idea. Like everyone I talked to about this, but just kind of a sidebar. Everyone I talked to about this issue with cormorants, I agree with. No matter what side they're on, I come out going, "Yep, I'm with you." And then I talk to the other guy. I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." And I'm like, "I don't know."
Good point.
Yeah, great ideas. Yeah,
Clay, as you were telling the story about this whole thing, and I'm picturing the guys. They're backing up. They're getting ready to stock the lake. They're like, "All right, let's put all the fish in the lake," and they no more than dump the fish in the lake, and all these birds are coming down and eating the fish, and they're like, "No, my fish!" It was just, I just had this picture in my mind that all these birds are like, yeah, lunchtime, let's do this.
That's exactly what happens. It's precisely what's going on. Yeah. Seems dumb to me to put the fish in the lake. I don't know, but
right. But then there were so many like, hey, the birds sleep at night, so put the fish in the lake at night. I was like, well, that seems like a pretty easy answer.
Paper, yeah.
But these are state workers. They're going to pay them double time to work nights. You can't just do that.
Or put them in the lake lower, like, put a big tube down there and shove them to the bottom of the lake where the birds can't get them.
Yeah, or shoot the birds, I guess, is what people are suggesting. Right?
Or shoot the birds. There's that.
That's my least favorite of all options.
Yes, right.
So, yeah.
The birds are coming there because there's fish to eat. Hello.
Hello. We feed them.
Follow the truck. Like, hey, here it comes. Let everybody get ready.
They're smart. They're smart.
This other one that I wanted to point out again is kind of optional. Some people edit their shows and some people don't. And I always try to make my guests sound good. And this may have been this person's first podcast. I had somebody a little while ago that I think was nervous just to be on a podcast. And they were an umming and oh my God, I've had a nickel for every they said. And so I'm going to play you 2 clips here. This was the first one. What it was, and this is where I'm not a fish nerd, so I'm not sure how this works. But you asked him about how are the fish growing? Is it natural, or is it managed or something else? I forget the other verb you said. So in reality, you've given him 1 or 2 answers. Or is it this or that? And he said I think he says managed. And then he went into this whole thing about dams, and I'm like going, is that relevant to the? That's where I'm like, I'm not a fisher. I'm not sure if I'm happy that he's talking about the dams or not. So let me just give you a quick example of this.
Okay.
They have like a population that actually reproduces on its own, or are they completely managed? Or is it a combination?
For the most part, it is completely managed, but there's been a major effort to try to get natural reproduction, and there's been great strides made in recent years. For a while, because of VHS and the concern of viruses spreading into inland waters, there's dams in the Winooski, and they weren't allowing fish to be transferred above the dams where they had the habitat they really needed to.
So he goes into a bit of I don't know if that's a tangent or not, but I went back because I'm thinking he asked him, is it managed or unmanaged? And I took his same words and just cut out all that minutia about the dams and the Minushkis and everything else. And
for the most part, it is completely managed, but there's been a major effort to try to get natural reproduction, and there's been great strides made in recent years. So in the last couple of years, we have had some really good signs of what could be a return of natural reproduction of salmon in the lake.
So we still get his answer without taking a road trip. So I don't know if that's good or bad, because I don't know how important the dam part of that answer was.
It's not that important. And you're right. Editing would make a big difference. This is a funny thing about amateur podcasting, right? It's I'm not defending. I think you're right on the money. It's a time money swap, right? Like, how much time do I want to put in a podcast where I'm not making money, right? So we do the best we can, but in a perfect world, I would have edited that like crazy, and that interview would have been half its length. Because listening back myself, I was like, I could take about half of that out, and that would be a much cleaner interview. But you're totally right on the money. I mean, you nailed it. Interesting thing about this interview is I couldn't get him on Skype, so that was a phone call.
Yeah.
That I used a Dave Jackson style of podcast recording. I followed your YouTube video on how to do that. And it came out okay for a phone call. I've had a lot of phone calls that just failed, and I thought it was pretty good for what it was. And he didn't have a Facebook page or a website or anything to like link to. So it was almost, I felt like it was in a lot of ways a mismatch for even a podcast, because I couldn't send people anywhere to like check out more information on him. But it actually happened to be one of our most shared episodes on social media, which was bizarre. Everyone was sharing it. It got all kinds of like shared on other fishing pages, and discussions happened around it. And I was surprised because the person who I was interviewing had no real web presence at all, except for his personal Facebook account. So
yeah, I think the debate probably really helped it take off, because I think with this particular topic, most people are on one side or the other. And I think that really helped it. With regard to the dam part, I really didn't have a big issue about that, because the fact that there's a dam there and the fish can't get far enough upstream for their natural reproductive process, I think that kind of explained why it isn't as natural as it once was, and why it needs to be managed. I didn't have as much problem, probably because I was able to follow along a little better than Dave was on that particular on that particular piece. But then again, going back to, we got to remember that if there's just the hobbyist that's listening and isn't as fanatical about fishing, maybe a little explanation could have helped along.
Well,
I'm not, Clay, let me ask you this. With regard to the listeners of your podcast, are you looking for the guys who are rabid fishermen who know every species that are out there and the difference between catching walleye and catching trout? Or are you looking for the guy who likes to just go throw a line in the water every other weekend when he's got a chance?
So early on our show, we were invited on to a lot of NPR shows. So we had a lot of NPR press, and they compared our show to Car Talk. They said the fish nerds are to fish, but the Car Talk guys are to cars. And the idea, and our show has always been, and it's changed since then a little bit, but our idea has always been to try and make a topic interesting that might not be interesting to everybody, make it all of a sudden accessible to other people. So we have a lot of hardcore anglers, but we have a lot of non-fishers who listen to the show. A lot of people who contribute on both our Patreon and our private Facebook groups to the show who don't fish at all, who just like talking conservation and fish. So we kind of we want to attract all people, but we do have a lot of fanatical people. We have a lot of, I guess. So I don't have that's always been my problem too, is defining our audience, is who am I talking to? And I've always wanted to talk to everybody at one time. And that might be why it's stifled our growth a little bit in the show too, why we're not reaching, 20,000 people a month. We're not nichey enough, but I'm not a nichey person. I like to talk about whatever fish thing interests me that week. So,
well, Click and Clack are fantastic on Car Talk, and I think you have the delivery and the personality to be just like them. The thing that Click and Clack do incredibly well is they explain it to you like you're a sixth grader trying to fix a car. When they say, when you open your hood and you look down in there, the alternator is the one with the small belt on it and the little pulley on the front, and they're telling you like you've never opened a hood of a car before. But the car guys who absolutely love a car, they know what an alternator looks like. They know where the alternator belt is and what the pulley that it's around in the front. But Click and Clack make it entertaining even to those guys by over explaining it. And I think it's appealing to everybody. One of my favorite Click and Clack bits, so some lady calls up and she said, every time I turn to the left, my car squeals and I don't understand why, and I can't figure out how to get it to stop. And they go, oh, that's easy. Just stop turning to the left.
Easy.
And then they go on to explain the power steering and everything. Yeah. And it's easy to understand for the layperson, but the real car guys love it too, because they're in that same boat trying to explain how the alternator affects the battery and how it all works together. They're in that same position trying to explain it to lay people every day too. So when it comes time to explain what this bird happens to be and why it's a bad bird, if you give a sentence or two about what the bird is, the true anglers, the passionate anglers, they're not going to hold that against you. They're going to understand that you're having to explain it just like they have to explain it. When they're trying to explain it to their brother-in-law who's never fished in his life, they're trying to do the same thing. So I love the Click and Clack, the Car Talk analogy. I think your show has a lot of those characteristics in it, and it becomes very entertaining. I'm not a big fisherman. I fish maybe once a year, but I enjoyed listening to it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I used to have a partner named Dave who founded the show with me. He did 120 some odd episodes with me. I say we all the time because that's how it's always been.
Okay.
I can't help it. When we were writing, it was always we, and we're talking, it's always we. I'm on stage a few weeks ago at the aquarium in Virginia Beach, and I'm up there, I'm going, and we're doing this tonight, and it's just me on stage because it's how I talk now. I've gotten this kind of funny habit. But when he was on when Dave was on the show, we were on NPR, gosh, every 6 weeks or so.
Oh,
and
wow.
We were selling stories to public radio, and we had this kind of thing that worked. And since he left the show, I've been experimenting, trying to figure out the new show voice, new show direction. And so it's a very different show now than when we were both working together. He's still part of the creative team, but he's not a voice in the show anymore.
You just
So
didn't have time, or what happened?
life changes, man. When you do a hobby podcast for years, it's really hard to sustain when you're not when it's not making you money. We got paid a little bit of money and we get paid to make appearances, but it's not quit your job money. And he has a daughter off to college, and it just changes everything. And and people named Dave aren't known to be reliable, and you just avoid working with them too long. You just got to do it when you can. So
Awesome.
Speaking of making money, do you have T-shirts for sale? Because some of your lines are perfect. I had this clear down at the bottom. If you don't have T-shirts for sale, some of the lines that you use in this show could be they're ripe for the picking when it comes to T-shirts.
what did I say? Like culture sucks or something?
No, what's your we're gonna play it in a little bit. Your tagline at the end. We're gonna play it out here in a little bit. That's
I actually have those on.
T-shirt.
I had those on sweatshirts that I give out to a few people who've been really big supporters. So I do have those on shirts.
Yeah, put
But
those
not
on
for sale.
T-shirts and sell
Yeah.
them on the website. You'll make some cash.
I hope so. We got to talk about that too.
Well, before we get to the ending, we should probably talk about the one and only Hugo.
Yes, Hugo,
And
our resident seagull.
and
Yeah.
is this a guy that does this on a regular basis, or?
He does it intermittently. So like once in a while, Hugo will catch a bunch of fish and record like 10 4-minute segments for me and email me all in one day. And so he'll be on the show for 6 or 8 weeks straight, and then we won't hear from Hugo again for another year. It's just he's very seasonal. He's a great guy, and he's been part of our show as a fan since the very beginning. And he's been wanting to he's been always sharing fish photos, and Hugo's Portuguese and his wife is Filipino, and they're big fish eating cultures, both those countries, and they eat everything. And I really like that because he'll eat the fish roe and the eyeballs and the stuff that no one talks about, and it makes the show more interesting. Because one thing, even if you don't fish, one thing we all have in common is we all eat. And it's one of those things that pulls people in, I think. And eating is also an act of violence, so it's also fun to talk about like killing things, because you cannot eat things without killing things. Even things are going to die. And I was like talking about that. So that's Hugo. And he started off as a fan and then kept sending me audio. And just like you, Dave, when people send me audio, I want to use it in the show and thank them and use it. But we need to let's talk about Hugo.
Well, the thing I liked about it is, for somebody who's not like officially part of the show, he's not sitting there next to you as kind of like just somebody that literally mailed it in. I was like, wow, I love the realism. I sounded like I was right there in the kitchen with Hugo, watching him cook his fish. And I just liked the fact that he was just that realism part. Eric,
Yeah. Well, I hang on a second. I sent. So I did is Hugo started working with us, and he sent us some stuff, and it wasn't stuff I wanted to use right away. So I mailed him a H1 recorder, H1N or whatever, and I said, turn this on, put it on your counter, and tell me how you're cooking the fish, and tell me how it tastes. And I did one for him. I recorded one on that H1N and sent it to him as an example and said, do this. And then he started doing that. And I love it. And
that explains a whole lot, because I was like, man, that sounded pretty good for just some guy that's in his kitchen. It's Hugo the Fisher dude, and I'm like, that's pretty good audio.
I love
and we
Hugo.
love Hugo.
I love him.
Yeah, he's great.
Do you have a clip of him, Dave?
Actually, I just looked down. I'm like, I don't have a clip of
So Hugo takes one for the team because he's eating these dogfish who,
Oh my
who
God.
are high levels of mercury, and he's like, I'm gonna take one for the team. I'm like, you go, Hugo. That's awesome.
Yeah, better Hugo dies than me. That's all I'm saying.
And he's the kind of guy like, I'll eat it, grill it up, let's try it. I loved
Yeah.
it. I would love to hear him when he tastes it. He just, I would like to hear him describe it a little bit more. But being just the guy on the street, I thought he sounded awesome. He was a lot of fun. If Hugo is sending you like 8 clips that you can use, and then you don't hear from him for a while, use him like every other episode. Spread him out a little bit, because then people won't know, like, oh, I wonder if Hugo's going to be on today. And then, if he's not on this week, you could tease, hey, next week, make sure you tune in because Hugo's eating dogfish, or we're gonna try and get Hugo to fry up some sea bass or whatever he's cooking next week.
Sea bass would be boring for Hugo.
Right. He's got to eat something that can kill you if you don't kill it first.
Yeah. And you're going to like this. So we had, before my partner Dave left the show, we already had a few correspondents. We had Hugo, we had a fish doctor named Doc Martin, and a team out west called the F and West, and a correspondent out in Australia named Shamos. And they were already submitting segments on occasion to the show. And when Dave left the show, I announced that the show was probably going to close down because I can't do it alone. And I had about, 24 people come forward and offer to be part of the show. First of all, a lot of people gave money all of a sudden. Patreon blew up. And a lot of people said, hey, I want to produce for your show. So I'm in the process now of interviewing new people who want to be part of the podcast, who want to be contributors as far as segment producers or just behind the scenes ideas people. So I have a page called the Secret Society of Fish Nerds with 17 people feeding ideas constantly. We've got a book club called the F and Book Club now. And Simon Schuster had heard it and started mailing me books in the mail, which is crazy. And we have a librarian from the Mid-Continent Public Library who runs that for us. So people all over the place just saying, oh, I got an idea, and just sending it in to try and save the show when I was threatening to close it down, which has been pretty amazing. And the reason I'm keeping going is because I have these people who really demand it every week. And if I don't do it, then I get hotline lights up. And I've got to keep it going. So
that's awesome. Yeah, if you can get those guys to contribute something once or even twice a month, where it's not a real burden on them. If they send you 4 segments that you can spread out, and you're getting 4 segments from 17 different people, now all of a sudden you have enough for an entire year. Even using 2 correspondents a week, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I would love that. Unfortunately, it's not as often as one would like, but we're going to work on it. We're going to try and rally them up to start contributing more regularly, or pile them on as a batch that I can spread out. Because and actually, Dave, you're going to like this, because this came a lot from listening to your show, is having people record segments for me and putting them all together and talking around them is so much fun and so much more engaging for the audience. And it makes people want to be part of what we're doing. And it's great fun. And it's more fun for me because I am so tired of me all the time.
And it also adds to the magazine variety of your show. It adds depth to your show, hearing different voices on the show, different perspectives. I love the correspondent idea. One last thing on Hugo. I would love to be able to find the recipe. If he has a recipe to cook up, because if you have the recipe, I don't know, he didn't mention it.
This is what it says on the website. Thai green curry dogfish. According to some studies, smooth dogfish may have more mercury than most other fish, so we need to be careful here. That's it. And
I failed. That's me.
So there were a couple things. Hugo said there were going to be pictures, and there weren't. And then the other thing I thought of, maybe a potentially missed opportunity, is he's talking about this green stuff he's putting on the fish. And I'm like, if they sell that at Amazon, get your affiliate link out and go to town.
Yeah.
Hugo's saying how good it is. And I was just thinking, if there were pictures, now I realize maybe Hugo didn't send in the pictures, but if there were, boy, now if you can get him to say, if you want to see what this looks like, it was awesome. That's an easy way to get people to your website. Because
in fairness to Hugo, he sent me pictures and the recipe, and I failed to put them on the website. That's all me.
Yeah,
Hugo did his job.
If you have an email list, the recipe would be a perfect lead magnet for your email list too. If you want Hugo's recipes, we mail them out every time he sends them in. So get on the list and we'll mail them to you. That'd be great.
Oh, you just jogged my brain. I've got like 25 Hugo recipes. That's an ebook.
Yeah, there you go.
I can give out that as a lead magnet, right? So
that'd be perfect.
Oh, you're my favorite now.
Just great. One other thing about the interview in itself. Again, assuming you have new listeners coming in the door, you were talking about Lake Champlain and Lake George, like we should all know where those were. And I should, but 1, I'm not a big fisherman, and 2, I don't live in the Northeast. So make sure your podcast nationwide, if not worldwide. So a quick explanation of what that'd be like me assuming that you know where to find Lake McConaughey or Johnson Lake. You know, it's two of the biggest lakes in the middle of Nebraska, probably our only lakes. But just make sure that you're clear to the casual listener, explaining some things like that. Otherwise, I thought the interview that you had with Captain Jack or whatever his name was, he was all right. I mean, he for not being a podcast guy, I thought he gave succinct answers. He wasn't going on and on and on. You had some great questions for him. I thought you guys had a great debate without getting adversarial. And I love the fact that toward the end you were like, still really don't know which side I'm on this thing, which was a great honesty on your part.
Yeah, that was going to be my thing. I really like the fact that without turning into Jerry Springer, or for those of us that remember Geraldo, it's like, hey, I'm going to bring somebody on that I'm not sure I agree with, without going, standing up and throwing chairs at each other. I thought it was cool to have a dialogue as opposed to just, you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that's how it started. We were on Facebook, and I'm like, you're a bucket biologist. You don't know crap, blah, 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 blah. And then I sent him a message saying, hey, man, I'm sorry. I jumped all up on you. Come on the show. Let's have this out on the show. And he's like, let me get back to you in 2 days. And I think what he did was he checked out the show for a couple of days, understood who I was, and then he called me and said, let's do this. So, and we didn't pre-interview. It was, let's just do it. And it was all fresh. And I thought he was pretty good. Only thing I wish is he had websites I can send people to or links I can put up, but it didn't seem to matter. So
yeah, he gave the phone number to his boat tours or something. Yeah. That was about it. So yeah. He's real casual, didn't really have an agenda. I thought it was a great interview. He seemed like a pretty decent guy.
His agenda was killing cormorants.
Yes, right. Shoot them.
Or put oil on the eggs. But more importantly he's a communicator. And so many of these, and I've done a lot of these where I've done the same thing and I've gotten the person on and it was so bad I never released it. Yeah. I went, this is just garbage. The person can't speak. It's got to go because I do an audio show. So it does happen, and I've had it happen with famous people who I put it out there, and the feedback from the audience was like, Clay, you shouldn't have released that. That was terrible. So we just but he was good, and for a phone call, I was really surprised the quality was acceptable, because I usually don't do phone calls at all because I can't take it.
Well, let's take a quick peek at your website.
Oh, I'm just sharing the screen.
I'm sharing the screen.
Cool.
Isn't that fun?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, when I first came to it, I just like the fact that your website matched your logo. There's a lot of free space. Like there's not a ton of clutter on here. I thought it was, and the fact, God bless you for having download buttons. I hate when I go to somebody's website and I cannot download the podcast. I have to stream it or subscribe on iTunes, and there's an easy download button right here. That made it super easy to do that. I like the fact that you're taking the time to make this artwork for each episode just so it kind of stands out. It's not boring to look at. And lots of shots looking down the throat of fish. You're
right.
The one thing I thought was missing was I somehow ended up on your YouTube channel, and there was a video of you on some TV, like Outdoor Mountaineer Sundays show or something like that. Mm-hmm. I was surprised that wasn't anywhere on your website, like, press or something like that to show kind of your legitimate, that word that I can't say, legitimacy. I've been asked to talk these different places. You could have a page like that to kind of like, look how cool we are. And
I should
be on, Sunday morning TV kind of thing. I was like, wow, that's not, if that was my video, I'd have it somewhere on the website. But Erik,
no, I should have it. You mentioned I should have it rotating in that sidebar. I've got commercials I've made rotating in there. I could rotate all those videos into that sidebar rotation. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see
Got it.
Fish Nerds Minute. There's a video there, White Mountains TV. Commercials I've made. I could rotate that right into those mixes.
The thing
So
I
if
like
we- if
about being able
yeah.
to download the episode is the fact I can download it. I can listen to the episode while I look at other pages on your website. So many people don't have that option. So you're streaming it right from their website and you go, oh, let's go look at the about page. And all of a sudden the podcast stops because you just went to the about page. Now you have to go back and restart the episode. So the fact that you have a download link is incredibly helpful. One thing I noticed on your pull down menus up top, you have blog. But you don't have podcasts. And when I clicked on blog, it kind of took me to the podcast. Do you have a blog as well, or is the blog the podcast?
It's not as defined as well as I might have it. Sometimes I just blog. And it will be in there. But for the most part, lately it's been just podcasts.
All right, you
But now I'm
you may
clicking
you
on
may consider changing that pull down menu to
Yeah.
podcast instead of blog. That just had me a little confused.
No, you're totally right. Yeah.
The shop link. I clicked on the shop link. I got an error on that. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but when I checked it
It's
the other
still
day,
the case. Yeah.
Um,
This is where I'm stuck, and I'll tell you why. As you know, being a podcaster, you got to be all things. And website guru, I am not. And I've spent 3 hours tonight after getting an email from Dave saying your shop link is dead, trying to just take the link off the site, and I haven't even found how
Well,
to do that.
The good news, the link at the bottom, which goes to fishnerdnation.ipage.com/fishnerdnation. If you click on that, that actually takes you to your shop, and where it says swag and things. And the only thing that I had to say about this is it wasn't a horrible first impression, but I was kind of like, like there weren't any pictures here.
Yeah, I can't find it. That was fun.
of your page. And so when I got here, I was like, okay, cool. And you got your cart system. To me, I would somehow, and again, I understand your pain. You're like, all you have to do
there it is.
You have to add pictures here.
Yeah. I'll tell you what happened, Dave, is I used to own fishnerdnation.com, and that was our swag page. And I don't own that anymore. I somehow missed a bill, and it's gone. And so the iPages is who I put my podcast, my website through. I don't know if it's called a host or what you call it. And so it has that memory of it, but all those things were photos at one point, and that website doesn't exist anymore. And so I'm trying to get rid of that link and just have it as a page on my website, a shopping page. I don't need 2 websites for the stuff we sell. But I don't have anything in stock to sell right now anyway. So
Clay, you may want to look into, there's a site called Cafe Press.
Yep.
And there's other sites like that'll print on demand for you and ship it for you, where you just kind of link to them. That way you don't have to stock anything and worry about it. That might be an option for you there.
Yeah, Teespring.
That's a good option. What Teespring?
Teespring,
Yep.
yeah. I love at the very end of the show, you do a nice job sending people to your Facebook page. But when I was on the site, I found it difficult to find a link to your Facebook page. Is there one on there?
Is it at the very top?
Oh, there it
Very
is.
top.
Very little bitty one up there.
Yeah.
Might want to make that more prominent, since that's the place where all of your fans can go to congregate and chit chat. That might be a
And this is actually just
opportunity.
the page, it's not the group.
Yeah.
So
I could change that because the group is where the action. I have 14,000 people on our page, and no one sees a thing on there. But the group is active and super fun, and that's where the action is. So I should link that.
Yeah, give that a shot.
Yeah.
But other than that, the one I didn't check on, I just realized is, okay, good. Your newsletter is fairly self-explanatory.
Mhm.
And
it works.
Yeah, okay. I was just making sure you're giving away something for that. Yeah, do you want to download the free Fish Nerds guides? So good. And I did test out, I did get your email. I tested your contact form. So that's what
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So it was good. So,
I love the clean, easy design of the website. I think it does everything you want it to do. And, when I come there, I get exactly what I'm looking for. It's not all cluttered up with a lot of distraction. It looks clean. The podcast episodes look clean. It's easy to find what I'm looking for. Other than that little Facebook link, I might make that a little bit bigger. But otherwise, I like the logo. I like the slogan. I like the website.
Yeah, we were going for. I was listening to This American Life when Ira Glass was talking to his grandmother about how to listen to a podcast, and he said you just go to thisamericanlife.com and push play. And so when we were looking for themes, unless you could go to fishnerds.com and push play, I was out. I didn't want to don't want to click through anything. I didn't want to make it a challenge to push play. I wanted to go boom, play, because Fisher people suck at computers, and got to make it simple for them. So we chose App and Deputy is the name of the company that we went through for that theme, and I really like it. It's limiting in a lot of ways too. I don't know how to change things to make it. There's a lot of things I want to do, and I just can't think of how to put that thing in the spot because I don't speak HTML. That's my problem.
The other thing I just want to point out, I thought your audio sounded fine. The only thing I noticed is you record it seems to be stopping at about -6, which is okay, except in some places it gets pretty quiet. Like down in here, I was like, you've got a lot of headroom where you could actually make your volume a little louder, because what happens is in all this white space, that's just hiss. The more white space you leave, the more you've left the door open for hiss. And what I was really surprised about is when you get to the actual phone interview, I was surprised. I was listening to this outside in headphones. You can see where when he talks, he's way up here where kind of he should be. He's approaching 0, which is always weird in audio that you go up to 0, and you can see you're way down here. Eric, did you think there was a huge difference between the volume of Clay and the guy on the phone?
Oh yeah, when I was listening in my car, there was definitely the guest on the phone was definitely hotter than Clay, and I thought that was kind of odd because usually on a phone it's the opposite.
Right.
But yeah, there was a difference in the audio level.
Yeah, and so about half of my shows are mixed by one of my listeners who wrote the jingle for us, the Fish in the News jingle, and half are mixed by me, and I prefer him to do it. But I run mine through Auphonics, and he does his all manually, I think using Adobe or something. And when I record the phone interview, I probably should be using a mixer, but I don't. I just run it. I call on Skype, and then from my audio jack into my H4n goes that line, and then mine goes directly from my microphone into the H4n. So it's 2 tracks, and mine somehow always comes out. Because mine always comes out way quieter, and I have to find a way to boost that up afterwards, and I can't quite. I'm not an audio engineer, so it's hard in a lot of ways to get that right.
When you take them into your H4n, are you taking one into the left and one into the right?
Yep.
Then you can pan those, and then when you load it into your audio software, one should be on each track. You should have the left channel on one track, the right channel on the other track. And then you should be able to boost the audio level. You should be able to amplify your level just a little bit, 3 dB or whatever, to make it equal to whatever the other one is.
Yeah. And so I'm going to write down all these numbers you're saying, because I don't know what they mean. Because I do it by sound. I put my headphones on, not my daughter's usually, and I just adjust them. Go, is that right? That sounds the same now, and I release it. And
if you can get the levels to look similar, then you're good to go. And you know, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll take the left channel and I'll amplify it 3 dB. And if that doesn't look like it's enough, I'll undo it and I'll do it by 6 dB. Or if I do it by 6 dB and that's too much, I undo it and I do it by 3 dB. I just do it until it looks right.
All right. That's what I'll do visually.
I wasn't listening because I've had some people will send me a podcast to listen to, and if I listen to it outside on earbuds, I've got my phone all the way up and I can't hear it because cars are driving by or whatever. So I didn't have that problem. It wasn't that quiet.
That's good.
And I was actually surprised when I opened it up to go, wow, he's got a lot of headroom here. He could actually even make it louder. I actually thought it sounded okay. And I was surprised that for me, where I was listening to it, I could tell you were quieter. I didn't think it was that much of a difference, but when I looked at the audio, I'm like, wow, he's really, unbalanced compared to the other guy. So I think part of that was, I think it was some of the tone of the phone. Kind of he cut through maybe a little more or whatever. But in the end, I never had to adjust the volume on my phone. I was fine listening to it, but I just was like, just as a tip, because I don't think your show sounds bad, but you can make it sound better by making that just a little louder.
I'll get one more better. We'll get there.
Yes. So, and then you, I thought it was cool. Number one, that you were trying something new with these phone in your fish reports. So I kudos for having some guy in your show that you kind of disagreed with. Then number two, saying, hey, let's try this. Send in your phone reports. And before you did that, you actually kind of ended the show for you before you get to the local guys. And that sounded like this.
So there's a lot to talk about with that. I would love to hear your opinion on it. Feel free to join the conversation on Facebook. We have a really great active Facebook group called the Fish Nerds Podcast Group, and we'd be happy to discuss all this further. But we're out of time. So that's it. You've listened to a bunch of fish nerds when you should have been fishing. Special thanks to Hugo Medeiros for his dogfish segment and his willingness to suffer the effects of mercury poisoning for you. And, of course, our friend Rob Thorne from Captain Thorny's Fishing Charters on Lake Champlain. Big thanks to Diana's Bath Salt providing the music for Fish in the News. And until next time, follow the code of the fish nerds, spawn early and often. Avoid free lunches with strings attached and swim against the current every chance you get. And now it's time for your local fishing report. If you want to report what fishing is like in your area, and we want you to, call 607-378-FISH and leave us a report. Try to keep it to less than a minute, unless it's a great story, then go on. Anyway, thank you so much for being part of this, and good day to you all.
So I thought it was good again that you're giving precise, don't just hey, send something in. No, that's never good. So I like the fact that you gave, again, try to get to the point. So,
Clay, early on, we talked about talking to one individual person rather than listeners. And right here, you did just that. We want you to call in your fish report. You did you did perfectly right there. I love that. And we were talking about your T-shirts. I love the you just listened to a bunch of fish nerds when you should have been fishing, which I thought was classic. Like, what are you doing? Get out of here. And follow the code of the fish nerds. Swim early, spawn early and often. Avoid free lunches with strings attached, and swim against the current every chance you get. Would be 3 fantastic slogans on 3 different T-shirts with the fish nerd logo on there as well. And I think rather than saying, hey, just donate random money to me, you create some $5 T-shirts and sell them for $25 on your website. People are going to be getting the fish nerd T-shirts, and you're going to be making some money, and it'll be a good thing. I would love to see you do that. I think that's a great opportunity for you there. I love the clothes. I love the fact that it's nice and tight. And my favorite thing, I tell so many people to do this, let the conversation continue once the podcast is done. Like when the podcast is over, you don't want your listeners to just go away. You continue the conversation on Facebook, whether it's about this or something else. And that was perfect. That's exactly what you need to do. You need to keep your community engaged, whether that's Facebook or somewhere else. And that's exactly what you did. We're out of time to discuss it today, but head on over to our Facebook page. We'll keep the discussion going there. That was awesome. Loved it.
And
thanks.
I like the fact that you have this segment. You're not sure how it's going to go. And so you stuck it at the very end. Because I was like, let's put it there as a testing ground. And because that's one of those things that's not going to resonate with everybody, because, hey, the fishing in Alabama is great. I'm like, okay, I live in, Hamburg. Not really going to do a whole lot. So I thought it was a really good move to put it at the end. Number one, it gets your audience involved. And I've heard other podcasts that do this. They'll just play all their feedback at the end. So there was Hall of Fame podcasters, Don and Drew. Their last 3 minutes were always just people going, man, when hey, Don and Drew, this is Steve from Poughkeepsie, blah, 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 but it was always just these random things. And they always, it was almost its whole other show was the comments at the end. And so that way, if you didn't like the comments, you just hit the 60-second skip a couple times and you're done. So I thought that was a pretty good move, putting that at the end. I love the one guy's like, fishing here is horrible.
That's what I was going to say. My favorite report. Fishing here sucks. I can't catch anything.
It's a valid report. I'll take them all. And
That was
anytime anyone submits audio to our show, we try to find a way to use it because it's so much effort to get someone to do that. So we find a way to stick it in there. I find a way to stick it in there.
It would be funny if Dave was still on the show, but isn't really on the show. You just refer to Dave all the time. I'll get Dave to do that. You know, that'd be something good for Dave to do.
Yeah.
Like Dave is behind the scenes, but he's never on the mic. How come we don't hear Dave anymore?
He'd be like my teller.
Right. Hey,
Yeah.
Dave, can you bring some of that stuff? I'm getting Dave to do it. Hang on a second.
I might do that. Although on his last episode he was on, I killed him on the show. So the show ended when we did the follow the code of the fish. I said, "Hey, Dave, how's your heart?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I played beep, 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 and the show ended. And that was it.
Nice.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So Dave's dead. Sorry, he's chum.
The only other notes I had were, and this is not, again, I'm nitpicking.
Yeah, please.
Somewhere in your conversation, you still had Facebook open because
Oh, you hear the bloom, bloom,
the bing,
bloom.
and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, and then because immediately I looked up to see if somebody.
It's your Facebook. Yeah.
Was that my phone?
Yeah, it happens more than I like to admit. It's a weird thing because I gotta mute. I've just to mute my settings is all because I need Facebook as part of my show because I'm always referencing. There's always a comment that I'm actually I'll use a joke that someone wrote or I'll use something on Facebook, but I got to find a way to get that noise to go away, and I haven't tried. So it's a fair nitpick because I've not made any effort to get rid of it, and I also could edit if I wanted to.
And then my other thing, I just wrote this down and I'm like, I don't know if we could use this somewhere, but it pulled at my heartstrings. And I was like, ooh, that was good stuff there. Is when the guy in the interview said that we've lost 2 generations of salmon. And I thought about that a second. I'm like, that's something like you can't like just go, oh, we'll just bring out some more. I was like, no, that's gone and they're not coming back. And I was like, I don't know if you could work that into a teaser somewhere or something. To me, I was like looking for that. I was like, ooh, that's a good, we could use that somewhere to,
Yeah. You know what? I think I got a little lazy in the last few episodes. And as I used to pull clips like that, and I would play those before the intro music, before anything. It would be like someone with a quote like that. And then it would go, and the music, and I would do the intro and all that stuff. And so I could start doing that again. I just got a little bit busy
either that
and lazy.
or if you don't, because I realized everything I just mentioned here, it's like Dave's little nitpicks just added, 20 minutes of production.
It's all good. It's all good.
Sometimes you could just, go, ooh, that's cool. And then just, have you say it. So, today we're going to talk about the bird that I cannot remember, the cormorants, something.
Cormorants, yeah.
Bird, on one hand, we've lost 2 generations of salmon. On the other hand, we can't just go around blowing up birds. So what are we going to do? I don't know. But I just, that I was like, ooh, ouch, that sounds painful. So,
and then those also lend themselves to good titles and good headlines, and I should be pulling those and using them. It's great stuff, and I do try to pull from the show for the headlines, but I don't always.
But as somebody who has fished all of about maybe 10 times in his life, not that
So
I don't.
sad.
I've just never, I had one of my brother's friends used to fish all the time, and he would just come over and kidnap me. It was kind of fun. But I actually was not bored as not a fish nerd. But I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. Like we said earlier, I love the energy, and I love the fact that you pretty much got right to the content, and you let me know where I was going. I like the way you wrapped it up. And really, there wasn't a whole lot. Like I said, everything I brought up tonight was like, I'm kind of nitpicking on some of this stuff. Eric, what were your final thoughts?
Yeah, Clay, most of the stuff that we're talking about is just ways to clean it up a little bit. You could do absolutely nothing we suggested and you'd still have a great podcast because it is fun, it's funny, it's entertaining, and it flies by. It doesn't feel like you're listening to a 45-minute or an hour-long show. It hits you, it keeps you entertained. You have various voices on it, and I found it to be a great show. You have a solid production there. The things that we're talking about is just some housekeeping and some tightening up and cleaning up here and there, and it just make your show even better than it already is. But you already have a fantastic podcast that's highly entertaining, and I congratulate you on doing it as a one-man show. It sounds great.
Oh, hey, thanks. And we're having a lot of fun, and it's interesting to see it kind of evolving and seeing where it's going to go next. And weirdly, is the show has been growing. We when Dave, my partner, left the show back in September, almost a year ago now. We were averaging about 220 listens per episode in a 30-day period. We were using Libsyn. We just switched at that time, and now we're getting close to 1,000 there, which is
Wow.
yeah, which is pretty exciting to see. And our show also shares another feed with another podcast channel. We're part of a network called the Outdoor Podcast Channel. It's one feed with like 30 shows. It's ridiculously dumb. But we get about 200 more listens on that. So I add those numbers to my numbers. But yeah, it's not dumb. It's just it's too much on one. I can't listen to it. It's too much on one feed.
Well, the other thing that I'm always amazed more people don't do this. I hear about you on other shows.
Oh,
I heard about you on Sheep Podcast.
Yep.
I heard about you, I think, on the feed.
Yep.
Because everybody's always going, send me feedback. And I'm always amazed that people are like going, they're just saying, hey, I will put your name in front of my audience. All you have to do is contact me. And people don't take advantage of that.
Yeah, I've been on the Varmints podcast. I've been on the World's Greatest Fishing podcast. Been on the Great Beer Adventure. And in fact, Dave, are you going to Podcast Mid-Atlantic?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm presenting there this year with the Great Beer Adventure, and we're doing a segment on pairing your podcast, like when Batman was on Scooby-Doo. Like, how can you bring two things that don't belong together and put them together and make progress? And being on other podcasts for me has been a bigger deal for getting new downloads than being on public radio, which I'm on frequently enough, and they buy content from me, but it doesn't lead to more subscribers or more listeners to my show. But being on the Varmints podcast or Great Beer Adventure, or hopefully on School of Podcasting, all these things should podcasters get it, and podcast listeners get it, and they listen to podcasts and they're looking for more content. So
I want to go back to one thing you said at the very beginning. You said fish people are not computer people. I see you have subscribe buttons on your website.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to add a page that says, subscribe at the top, and then do a Glenn the Geek and have directions with screenshots.
That's a great idea. I'll just steal Glenn's.
There you go. Just go over and grab it, paste it into your website. Literally, good. Because horse people, he has said, are not computer people. So sometimes kind of go, hey, subscribe to the show, and they're like, the what of the who?
Yep. No, I stand.
Actually, I think it was Speed Buggy that was on Scooby-Doo, not Batman.
I thought it was the Harlem Globetrotters.
Harlem Globetrotters were on Scooby-Doo.
All those things are true. All those things are true things. Yeah. They all were on Scooby-Doo, and they all, when they were on, is when I tuned in. So it's really important. But
it got away with it. It wasn't for those stupid kids.
Yeah, those meddling kids. Blast. Yeah.
Bring back the Laugh Olympics.
Oh my God.
So Clay, any final questions as we start to wrap things up?
No, it's funny. I'm addicted to your stupid podcast rodeo. The dumbest 5 minutes of my day, and I cannot get enough of podcast rodeo. And I was like, first of all, I'm like, I hope Dave never puts my show on there. And then I thought about it, and I started listening to. I binged on every podcast. What are we on right now? What's the name of the show we're on?
Review show.
I binged on the entire catalog of this, and I thought, you know what? I need to put my podcast under the fire. We're 160 some odd episodes in, and I'm coasting, and I need to get better. And I was hoping that, and I think I got it. I was hoping that you guys would give me some feedback to change what I'm doing to make the show a little better quality, and hopefully that leads to more listeners and more interesting people to talk to. So the final thoughts are, thank you for having me on. And I had a lot of fun in this hour, and whatever went by in a pretty good time. And Erik, it's good to see you using the same microphone as me. I feel like I'm cool. First time ever.
But I also want to say that's a great point. One of the things I like that I'm hearing from you is you're focusing on interacting with your audience and coming up with great content. I didn't hear you once mention, well, you know, I might get more people if I have a high LPR 40. Your sound is fine. Move on. Now let's talk some fish. So
Yeah.
kudos to not obsessing over the tech, because
I can't afford to obsess over the tech. We make about $300 a month on Patreon, and that covers our expenses, and then a little bit of money to take care of some fun things like hats for people and things like that. But it's not much. And so far, all of our advertisers have all been just affiliate types, and I haven't made any real money off of that. I'm on the fence whether I want to do any more of those ever. So it's a tough sell. So give them 40 seconds for $10.
Are you in a place where Amazon doesn't have an affiliate program?
I'm in a place where Amazon keeps rejecting my EIN number for my business. I don't know why. So I have an LLC, and they keep rejecting it as not a valid LLC, and I'm like, it's the number, and I just keep giving up on them. So yeah, I know what you're saying. I follow along.
That usually, I mean, it's not retirement money, but it's like, okay, I'll take, $30-$40 for doing nothing but saying click on the banner.
Well, sure, especially since I'm talking about fishing, and I can say, oh, I was using this, Stinky Pete today, and it caught this fish, and you can buy that through my website and click on Amazon and get paid. But so far, Amazon has not accepted my EIN number or my whatever business number I use. And
have you ever contacted their help department?
Oh, look at you, know it all. Have you tried calling them?
Well, no, the reason they are helpful to a point. They will respond. I was surprised.
Yeah, no, I haven't. But Bernie will always respond. I know that.
Bernie's making a cameo.
Yeah.
Through the door.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because my dog is barking at a bear right now. I got a bear in my front yard right now. My dog is growling. So I'm with you. Yeah. Maybe you got a bear, Dave.
Well,
I'm in the mountains, so I have bears.
That's it. Well, everybody go find Clay over at, and again, I love the branding, fishnerds.com. Nothing fancy about it. Show's called Fish Nerds, fishnerds.com. Erik,
it's the fanciest of all brands, the Fish Nerds.
Love it.
Erik, where can people find you?
You can always find me at podcasttalentcoach.com, and all my resources and everything right there for you, right on the homepage. So head on over there and check it out. How about you, Dave?
You can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. And if you would like to sit in the chair where Clay is tonight and have your show reviewed, go out to podcastshow.com. So thanks again, Clay.
Hey, thanks, guys.
You bet.
We'll see you again real soon with another episode.
All right.